Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Good evening. Welcome to Soul, with best-selling Texas author and sacred site traveler, Teal Gray. Coming to you on WBHM-DB Radio. Teal, what's on for tonight?
Good evening and welcome to Soul. I'm your host, Teal Gray. We're coming to you live on WBHM-DB Radio out of Birmingham, Alabama. Now tonight, you have got a special treat. This is one of my favorite people. I've known her for a few years and I have so much respect for her. She is so gifted in so many areas. We're going to be speaking to Lisa Martin. She is the author of Wicked Route 66, Haunted Joplin, Haunted Carthage, Missouri, and Haunted Southwest Missouri. She also is a lawyer, which I think that's pretty darn fascinating right there. But she is director of Paranormal Science Lab. Now, this is actually where I met her, was through that. They offer a variety of services to individuals, businesses, historic sites, private researches, investigations, and educational programs, and public history tours, ghost hunts year-round. And they raise funds to preserve these historic sites. And I tell you, it is done with such integrity, and we'll get into that when we get on here with her. But she is also, this is super exciting, there is in production for a TV show called Dark Ozarks. So without any delay, let's bring forward Lisa Martin. Welcome to the show.
Well, hi, Teal. It's good talking to you, and I appreciate you having me on tonight.
Oh, listen, I am thrilled. I was so excited when you said yes, because I know you're so busy. And I was like, yeah. And of course, you were on live on Instagram with your own show just a bit ago.
So, yeah.
Kind of roll from one to the next. But hey, when you're a Lisa Martin kind of person, you got to do that, right? Your days are busy.
Well, at least it keeps me out of trouble.
Well, that's good. That's good. I can go for that. Well, I want to, I know people are like, their heads are spinning because you really, that's a lot of area of expertise. And you're so eloquent. I just got to give you a little love and shout out for when we first met. And I've been touting your accolades ever since because, there's a lot of different groups and people throughout the country and the world. And I travel all over. And I have to say the eloquence, the integrity, just the class with which you run your tours and the investigations. And I had the privilege of being, down there in Missouri for almost a week. And so we had several different events and things with you that you were running. And each one was like, man, top of the top level. And I just want to congratulate you on that because that's not always the case, So you are not only giving people an education and sometimes even, quite a thrill or a scare. But it's also everything you're doing has a bit of a higher purpose because everything you do is not just, it's going to preserve these beautiful homes and buildings and different things. And I just want everybody to know that it's wonderful to go and have these investigations and have fun and educate yourself. But with your higher purpose, I just want to really celebrate that about you.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I think a lot of it is because we really enjoy what we do. Everyone involved is, passionate about history and preservation of historic sites. And so, when you're doing what you enjoy, you have fun, and hopefully people enjoy it.
I tell you, I can't remember, and I don't know, maybe you will. There was a home in Missouri that one of the nights we were with you, this particular place was very haunted and had a lot of activity going on, even from day to night, outside on the grounds, inside. And it used to be the home of a medical doctor. I believe it was in the Civil War. And there was a table that was still, a lot of the furnishings were original to the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a table off of the kitchen where he used to perform operations. What was it? Do you remember the name of that one?
Oh yeah, and actually, you almost got it exactly right there. It's the Kendrick House outside of Carthage, Missouri, and the table was actually used as operating table during the Civil War battle.
Yeah,
and
it had the blood on it, and my daughter was like, because you were like, was anybody brave enough to lay on it? She's like, oh yeah. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? And she jumped right up there. But she had an experience on that table, like it really amazing.
Yeah, a lot of people do. There's a lot of energy around it, and as you may recall, you can see the blood under UV light, and people often will have an experience of feeling like that. Someone is either holding their arms down or almost like, a doctor examining them, trying to figure out, examining a leg or whatever. Yeah. Some people then will feel like, like almost as if someone's holding them down, like they, would be preparing them for surgery. And sometimes people will have phantom pain. And then we've had a few times, not ironically, no women have done this, but we've had a few times that men, and it's funny, it's usually the big burly guy, will get up there and then get violently ill and had to run outside and throw up.
Yeah.
And my guess is that it would have been men on that table being, operate on soldiers. And maybe that's why they're having that experience. I don't know. But
that makes a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. But every time it's happened, they had felt perfectly fine beforehand. They hadn't been ill, no upset stomach or anything. And then actually after they went and threw up, shortly afterwards, they felt perfectly fine again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Gosh. And, there was experiences throughout that house that I, every once in a while, I still think about because, there was all sorts of people there. There were people that were new to this. There was people that were old and seasoned. There was all sorts, but I love the way that you presented the home, and we were welcomed into that home and the history of it and made aware of all the people. And like I said before, you're just perfect in the way that you welcomed us in, and we really got to know. And I'd never been on another place, a tour like that, where somebody really made you able to capture the life and the people that live there and the struggles, things that were happening in that house and the different rooms. And oh my gosh, I remember that even when we were at a little bit of a break in the in the what was, I guess now the real kitchen off of where this table was and other things, everything would be going off because it was almost like they still wanted to talk and, hey, we're excited you're here. And nobody was upstairs, and you could, hear people upstairs. There was no question about it. And then you could even hear people outside. In fact, we rushed out to one of the outbuildings thinking, what's going on? Is everything okay? Checking the cars, just, thinking it was going to be a bunch of kids maybe or people out there. There was nobody out there, but you could still stand there and hear things moving and going on. And wow. And there was one, I don't know what room it was in. I can't remember, but it was a big, what I would call an armoire, but it was more than that because, and I never realized this, that there was 2 levels to it, and people used to sleep inside it. and shut the door.
Well, yeah, those were actually built-in cabinets. And because the fireplaces, when it was built in the 1840s, the fireplaces were the only sources of heat. And there are times that, we get negative 10-degree nights in the winter, not often, fortunately, but it does happen. And so when it would get really cold, the family would sleep in the cabinets because the bricks from the fireplace were warm.
Well, I still remember, and I'm telling you, I'm a no nonsense person. I'm a skeptical believer always. And so I'm telling you the truth when I remember that I was in there, you were in there, and I believe John was in there with us, and we were just talking, we were just kind of having breaks, and people were upstairs, different things, and I was just there with y'all. And I asked, we were doing a little bit of a session, and I asked if there was anybody, that wanted to talk, these kind of things. And I'm telling you, those cabinets opened up. And I mean, it wasn't anything violent, but they opened up. And we checked and tried to debunk that. There was no way any easy latch was happening or anybody moving. We tried moving upstairs. We tried doing all these things. Nothing could recreate that or make those cabinets open the way they did.
Right.
Purposeful. Like it didn't just swing open, it wasn't random or kind of happenstance. It was very purposeful. And I was like, well, my goodness, that was really something.
Yeah, it's definitely a special place, and I really appreciate you saying the kind words, as far as bringing that we can bring it alive, because it is one of those places that is special to our hearts. And so
the dolls coming alive, I remember that place being just wow factor for everybody. Of every place we went, that was one everybody was like, wow. And I stayed in a place that used to be a funeral home, you know what I mean? Like I was sleeping where they used to have the bodies laid out, and that, while it was the most beautiful house, just in a gorgeous mansion, still the Hendricks house was one of those, like, wow, you just keep talking about it for years, so amazing.
Well, good.
Amazing job that you do. But I know that you have a lot of places that you do, and that's just my favorite, so I had to start with that. But
I have to admit, it's pretty close to my heart too. It's kind of like picking between your kids, but it probably is my favorite too.
Oh man, I tell you, we ought to do a show just on that sometime. But there's so much to cover. I mean, your books are very well written.
Thank you.
And congratulations. I mean, that's really great. But I want to touch on, of course, more about Paranormal Science Lab and the books and everything. But I do want to kind of get going and started because I'm super excited about Dark Ozarks. Can you I don't want to mess it up by trying to tell anybody. I'm just going to turn it over to you, and you fill us in on what it's going to be about and what we can expect and how it's going.
Okay, well, thank you. It's a TV series in development. I can't reveal details on network or anything,
sure.
But at this point, but it's a show about the noir past of the Ozarks. About the some of the unexplained mysteries, some of the noir history, nearly forgotten things, and how it ties into the larger American narrative, particularly as it went out west, because so many things that we associate with the Old West and sort of the mythos of the West actually started in the Ozarks.
Oh, okay.
And so, for instance, the first and only Old West style walk down, call out gunfight actually happened in Springfield, Missouri.
Oh.
And Wild Bill Hickok and Davis Tutt, he actually ended up killing his best friend. But that is really the only walk down, call out gunfight that they know of that happened the way it's portrayed in the movies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow.
And yeah. And so many things that we associate with the West actually started here, or the people started here, that we think of as the sort of the myth of of the Old West, such as Hickok, Wyatt Earp, all of these people. And so we'll be touching on that, plus some of the very dark history that's happened here, some of the unexplained mysteries, legends, a few ghosts.
Got to have those ghosts in there.
Oh yeah. So we're excited. It's a way of sharing, sort of that interesting dark side of history that they don't put in the books.
Yeah, I love that. Well, congratulations. That's really exciting. And then whenever it's time, I want to have you back on, and we'll celebrate it again. But
definitely.
I love that. The way you write. I love your books. That's no secret.
Thank you.
So I know that this, you're one of, the author, and it's in production, but one of the authors of it. So I know that it's going to be well written, and just the way you sort of just have this ability to, as I said before, just bring things to life. You transport through your words, and I'm sure visually will be very impactful, but you just feel like, the whoever you're talking about, you feel like you immediately understand, or you can see them there, and you just bring it to life. And so I'm really excited about that, because that was a great series, really good.
Thank you.
Well done, you. So is there, I've got to ask, because one of the questions that came through was, do you have, I guess that's like having to pick a favorite child at your point with stuff. But do you have I'm not even going to say a favorite, but do you have some favorite, and I'm not asking you to tell, on the show, but just in general, like, do you have some favorite spots, or maybe some favorite, ghost stories, or different things that have happened to you? I want you to ponder that. We've got just a couple of minutes before we go to break, but when we come back, we're going to get into all of that. And I want to say, while we just have a couple minutes before break, all your books are available on Amazon, correct? Still,
they're all on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, most of the book websites.
Yeah, and again, those are Wicked Route 66, Haunted Joplin, Haunted Carthage, Missouri, and Haunted Southwest Missouri. So, this is the time, I think this is the time of year when you can really cuddle up with some books that make you leave the light on. And I think these are definitely it. They're really good. So you're going to love that. But everybody, we're going to just go ahead and take a break, and it'll be short, this one. We got to hear from our sponsors, and then we're going to come right back, and we're going to dive in and find out what actually makes Lisa Martin go, yikes, that's a bit scary. We'll be right back, everybody.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk radio.
listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to Soul on WBHM-DB Radio, coming to you live out of Birmingham, Alabama. This is your host, Teal Gray, and we are talking to the very talented Lisa Martin, and we left her, kind of thinking about pondering, like, what were some moments in your vast career that made you really think, woof, this stuff's for real. And we're going to get to that, but I want to jump in because right before we went to break, we were talking and listing out her books for sale, and I know she's got a couple of books in the works. Can we talk about that for a minute?
Sure. I've got a couple that are in the process of being written and edited. One is an urban fantasy with sort of a supernatural bent to it, and it kind of melds my day job and my alter ego, in that it starts out centered on a murder investigation and an attorney that gets dragged into the murder investigation and then finds themselves in the midst of events that aren't explained and makes them question what they think is real and not real, and ultimately has to face the fact that they're dealing with something that is paranormal or supernatural.
Okay, I love that. Good one. Yeah.
And doing that, and then I'm writing a book that's actually on a series of murders that occurred, and an in-depth examination of the events and the people involved. Happened a long time ago. It actually, if you're familiar with the old noir movie, The Hitchhiker from the 50s, that was based on a true story. Well, actually, a sliver of the true story, because Hollywood wouldn't let them tell most of the story at the time, and some of the events actually happened, outside my back door, basically. Oh. And the murderer was from here, and so I'm actually writing a book on that.
That's going to be fascinating. Oh man, that's interesting. Was it? You think that they, back in the day, they didn't let a lot of things out just because it was too gruesome or too scary at the moment?
The studios had censors, and so there were so many things you couldn't do. It's the same reason why all of the TV shows in the 50s, the married couples had twin beds, because the censors would not allow you to show a man and woman in bed together. And actually, if they were in the same bed, each one had to have a foot on the floor on either side of the bed. And so one way they just dealt with that is generally for TV sitcoms or whatever, I Love Lucy or whatever, they'd always show twin beds.
Yeah, I remember that for I Love Lucy, Dick Van Dyke Show, all of those.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was
so scandalous.
That was for the censors. Yeah. Even though they were married couples, supposedly, And
Oh
so
my
they
God,
would do the same
has
thing.
gone to hell in a handbasket these days because anything goes. Anything. I don't know if it's not okay.
Exactly. But but with this story, they were afraid if they told the whole story that people would be too frightened and too freaked out. Ironically, it was a national news story at the time it happened, and the movie was filmed not long after, within 2 years. So it was, people knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
But the censors still wouldn't let them show the whole story. So
I'm looking forward to that read. That'll be great. And hey,
yeah.
you know what? You write the book, and we might get another movie out of it.
Maybe, who knows? It'd be neat. But yeah, so that's one I'm enjoying because there's a lot to the story that people don't really know, and so. But it is interesting because it really is the reason that your mother told you not to pick up hitchhikers, because that movie is why people decided to stop hitchhiking. It was very common until then.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it was, because so few people had cars, and just people don't really realize that now. They think about it, and they cannot get beyond the fact that there were no cell phones, and there were long stretches, depending on where you were, where there weren't payphones even, or walking was a thing, and
right.
So if somebody would give you a ride or something, that was common.
It was very common, and that's how a lot of people traveled cross country, because they couldn't afford to do it themselves. Even if they had the car, they couldn't afford the gas or whatever, and so it was very common. And this was the story that made people scared to pick up hitchhikers. So
yeah, well, there you go. Well, that'll be a good read to. I tell you, some of those, yeah, it reminds you, and you get a little paranoid, and sleep with the lights on. So I know that the pandemic has put a big shebang on everything, and it, my heart goes out to everybody all around the world. There's been so much loss from it, and we still continue to see that, and so as heartbreaking as it is, I know there'll come a time when we go back to a new normal. I don't think we'll ever go back to the old ways again altogether, but when we do get to a new normal, what do you have some things kind of on the books, or some wishful things that you'd like to do after that happens?
Well, we want to start holding public tours again, and events. And some of those are more at a location, including investigation, like as you were describing before. Some of them are walking tours in historic areas. But yeah, we definitely want to get back to that. We also do a series of events at a couple of large theaters in the region, actually 3 different ones, where we talk about some of the mysteries of the area, and different themes, different times when we do these things. And so we haven't been able to do those for quite a while. And so we're looking to get going with that. And we had just had only done this once, but were you at the old Opera House in Carthage when you were down here? Did we go there?
I believe that we did, because it was really beautiful, and it's so historic. I still remember the street going up to it, but I don't remember everything about it. But,
okay.
Yeah. So do tell.
We had started because we were we work with 2 old opera houses, and then another is a independent cinema in town, and we had just started doing sort of some shows on the road with them, where we would go to the old opera house, and show a movie and then have a program around it. And so we're looking forward to getting back and doing all those things.
Those opera houses are amazing. You know, I had I've given it up now. Just didn't need it anymore because I've moved places and I have a different office. But I used to have an office in the historic downtown Denton old theater, and I don't know why it didn't cross my mind before, but it really took. I was like, oh, okay. And they're like, oh, your office used to be, you know, the dressing room, and then backstage, you know, when you open your back doors, don't be surprised, they're still backstage back there. And I was like, what the heck? And it was, and I was like, but I'm upstairs. And I so forgot that, you know, everybody came in and, you know, in grand style, and at times, you know, with the big hoop skirts and the whatever, and they gathered downstairs, and then they went up to see the show. And I don't know how did I miss that memo, but it really surprised me. And then I was like, oh, that's a thing. So yeah, but that was super haunted. I don't know if the energy, maybe you have a thought on that. Why are theaters so haunted?
Well, there are a lot of haunted theaters. And I personally think sometimes it's someone that, you know, either owner or someone who worked there that was very, you know, blood, sweat, and tears in it. They, you know, their energy was mixed up with it. And then I think sometimes it's a matter that I think people like to go a place they enjoy, you know. I'm of the opinion most cemeteries I find are not haunted unless there's something that happened there for a reason to make it haunted.
Totally agree with that.
And so, you know, always, I don't think people hang out at their tombstone. And so they go somewhere that either they had that personal connection with, like their house, or someplace that they enjoyed.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, that's one reason theaters and a lot of fancy hotels, you know, tend to be haunted. Although with fancy hotels, another reason is that they tend to be a place people commit suicide in.
It is true. Yeah.
It is.
That's true. And I guess there's deaths like that in theaters because, you know, they put everything on the line, and it's so important that they are a star or that they make it. When they're not, sometimes people can't face it, you know, that doesn't go well.
That's true, or they just enjoyed performing so much that, you know, they're drawn back to that same place where they felt good.
Yeah, hotels, they do have their big share of suicides. This is for sure.
Well, you said, you made me think about experiences, and that actually ties into one.
Good.
The current building's not the hotel, but it's on site of a very elegant hotel, 9-story hotel that was in Joplin, Missouri, the Connor Hotel. And it ended up being demolished in the 70s, long story. And they built another building on site, which became the public library. And I investigated a number of times and while it was the library. And one night, we were there, some library staff were there, and a couple other local historians by our invitation. And, you know, they never used to put in the paper, you know, there was a suicide at the Connor Hotel. That's bad for business. But a concierge who had
your loved one for a special evening.
That's right. You know, room 302. But a concierge that had worked there for over 50 years, when he retired, he did an interview in the paper, and he talked about this, that yes, there had been suicides. He had found 10. And he, unfortunately, I guess, was a rather small fella. And of course, in the day, there were transom windows over the doors. And so when a guest didn't check out, he got to climb through the transom to see what was wrong. But the suicide that made the biggest impression on him, he said, it was in the 40s, and a lady comes in very elegantly dressed in a fur coat and so forth, and she rents a room on the 8th floor, and she orders a milkshake. She drank the milkshake and jumped out the window.
Wow.
So we're there that evening investigating, and I asked the question: is the lady who ordered the milkshake on the 8th floor here with us? And we hear this wailing sob, and it just like reverberates through the building to the point everybody turns and looks from the looks the direction it came.
Wow.
Everybody heard it, and it was, in fact, one of the historians that was there. We were talking in some messages, just a few months ago, and he brought that up. That was one of the most profound experiences that he'd had, that
yeah, wow, because
there
it was
was
direct response, and the fact that it wasn't just something that you caught on an EVP and you replay it later, but everybody heard that.
Oh yeah, everybody in the building heard it, and it was just so, it was, there was no mistaking, a woman just wailing and sobbing.
Wow.
So that's definitely one that
gives you a chill. Definitely gives you a chill.
It does. And then there's also actually another event there that talking about EVP or electronic voice phenomenon. Probably one of the best ones I ever caught, and one of the funnest, was actually there. And an investigator asked, "Is Mr. Connor with us tonight?" And he's the gentleman who owned the hotel. Mm-hmm. We didn't get Mr. Connor, but we get a distinctly Irish fellow. He's Irish brogue, and he sounds like he's a couple pints in. And he goes, he and I have been known to, and he starts mumbling, and very clear as day, and which is great in itself. But the irony there was, you just got the idea, like he's remembering good times, pranks or whatever, and Mr. Connor was known to be a prankster.
Oh, that's great.
So it just fit.
That's great. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's such for people listening, they may wonder, there's different types of haunting. That's an intelligent interaction or haunting, to where you're asking them something, they're listening to you, they're hanging out
and reacting.
And they react and they answer, but even better, as you said, with a chuckle, because they're remembering a time in that space with the person you're asking about. That's incredible.
Right. And like I said, what he said and everything fits with what we know about Tom Connor, and so it comes through very, believable that, someone was remembering something, So.
Oh, I love that. Wow. Well, so theaters, they're right up there with the number one. We're gonna break in about 5 minutes, but I think we can tackle this. What did you think about banks? Do you know that's a place for me that I know it should be haunted, but for me, I haven't had experiences. Have you had any bank experiences?
Banks. The only one that I can think of offhand. Well, I guess there's two. One is a building that, back in the 1800s, when it first opened, it was a bank, but it's been many other things since. Mm-hmm. And I haven't seen it personally, but I have heard the exact same account from so many people, you have to wonder. And it's on Town Square, and people will describe, they're up there walking in the evening or maybe a Sunday, and they notice a gentleman in a suit and a hat walking through, in the door. And then it dawns on them, it's 8:00 at night, it's Sunday evening, whatever. And they go over and the door's locked. There's no lights on whatsoever. But I've heard this identical account so many times over the years, the same place. I don't know if it's from the bank. I don't know. Mm-hmm. The other one that possibly is a very small town, not far from here, which it had a lot of activity during the Civil War, and it's actually a very haunted little place. The original bank is now the post office, and people will see shadow men come and go out of there, as well as a building that is just across the street and down a couple that dates to the 1860s, actually. And for most of the time it was open, was a saloon. And people will see shadow people coming in and out of those buildings, and sometimes actually walking into the street and falling down. And, some people say, oh, maybe, drunk coming out of the bank, or it could be someone being shot during the Civil War, because there were actually a lot of activity there, and it became there's a pretty notorious haunting there of a headless phantom from the Civil War.
Wow.
And so I don't know whether that the shadow people seen around that building are from the bank, or if it's from the Civil War or what. But those are the only two that I know of.
Mm-hmm. But that's really great. Wow.
Yeah.
I just, the history that you feel when you go in those buildings, I mean, it's just amazing. And I know that bricks, rocks, different things, they hold like a spatial memory in them. And I mean, do you agree with that? I know some people don't, but
I think it's, well, I think that, as well, usually there's a reason that we have sayings, and, if the walls could talk, I think in part does mean that, they really do hold secrets. They really do hold energy.
Mm-hmm.
But I know in our area, I think besides, Brits and so forth, the geology here, I think, does play a part. There's really a lot of activity, as when you were down there, there's a lot of places with activity in this region. Of course, a lot of things happen too, but we are actually on a plateau of limestone, which has a very high crystal content.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a number of underground caverns and underground rivers and lakes. So we have lots of water, lots of crystal.
Yeah. And, speaking of movement, we have to take a break. So we're going to move from this great conversation. We're going to go and hear from our wonderful sponsors, but we're going to be right back, and we're going to dive right back into these wonderful stories with Lisa Martin. We'll be right back, everyone.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Soul to Soul. This is your host, Teal Gray. We are talking to Lisa Martin tonight, live out of Birmingham, Alabama on WBHM-DB radio. Lisa, I gotta ask you, let's go back into this tale about this headless man. Can you tell us that story? It sounds intriguing.
Okay. Well, it comes from the Civil War era. A little town, it's called Villa, Missouri. Just a wide spot in the road right now, and actually original Route 66 runs right through it. And during the Civil War, it was a Union stronghold, and bushwhackers, and whether they were politically Confederate or then there were some that were just out, stealing cattle, horses, etc. Bushwhackers they would attack towns. And so most places kind of did the, when we're attacked, we circle the wagon kind of mentality in a defensive posture. Villa decided they were kind of out on the, open area, and they became proactive, and they actually hunted bushwhackers. They went out patrolling every night, and if they found bushwhackers, they killed them to protect the town. And one night they found a corpse of a dead bushwhacker. Had been there a while, and they didn't realize he'd been killed. And so they took the skull and hung it from a tree along the road, basically as a warning, bushwhacker beware.
I'd be like, I'm going to go home and be good from now on.
And the story goes that it hung there for a long time. That it, crows started singing in the tree, very an ominous sight, and that it was there for at least a year or two until, no one really knows what happened to it. And the story goes that the phantom of the headless bushwhacker is still seen going through that area, through the pastures. Sometimes he's carrying a lantern. Some people say they see him in a lawn duster and a rifle, but he tends to be looking like he's looking for something. And so the legend goes he's looking for his head.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. That is really something. Wow. Well, I've got to ask, we've got a few minutes and I want to give you time in a minute to go over all of your stuff. But is there anything on your bucket list, so to speak, that you still want to investigate? Is there anywhere or any legend or place that you might still haven't seen? I can't imagine it almost, but is there something that you're still interested in?
Oh, well, there's lots of places I'm interested in, but off the top of my head, I've done a lot of the big ones, and generally, they're a little disappointing. I'm not saying that they aren't great, but sometimes the hype is more than what you get.
Yeah.
And so I'm always on the lookout for new places, new legends, and I just kind of take those as they come. I never know, sometimes it's like, hey, have you heard about, or can you check this out? And I have found over the years that, all the places that we end up contact with and investigating, it tends to be just sort of an organic way things happen. And, as you know, sometimes something will happen, a building will close or sell, and you lose access to it, and you're sad about it. And then something else comes along, and it's usually in an unexpected way.
Yeah, sometimes even a family home or an old mansion or farm.
Oh, yeah.
Can be crazy.
Oh, yeah. And so basically I'm open to, I'm excited whenever any new opportunity comes up, because they all are unique. And they all have their own story. And I think that's me. Maybe it's a storyteller in me that I want the next story.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I always want to know, and then I always want to go deeper. Well, what's the backstory? Like, what's like, I'm still thinking about the lady that came up in the fur coat, wanted the milkshake. Like, why did she jump? What's the story behind that?
Exactly. What happened that she felt like that was the last, all that she could do. Yeah. That that's one that goes through my mind a lot too. I always wonder about her.
Well, while we're in the last, 4 or 5 minutes here, I want to give you time for you to let everybody know how to find out about you, where to reach you, where to look for things, where to listen to your shows, and about your books, etc. I'm going to turn it over to you for a few minutes.
Okay. I appreciate that. Well, basically, for books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, pretty much all of the online websites for books. I do write under Lisa Livingston Martin, and there's several out there: Haunted Joplin, Haunted Carthage, Missouri, Civil War Ghosts of Southwest Missouri, Missouri's Wicked Route 66, and it has some ghosts, but it has a lot of gangsters and outlaws in it too. As far as contacting us, paranormalsciencelab.com is a website. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook as well. I have a writer's page on Instagram, Lisa Martin Author, as well as on Facebook. And then Dark Ozarks, which is the TV show in development, is on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And we have a lot of content on there between posts and videos, and we do live videos every Wednesday. We did one earlier this evening, and so I invite anyone to check out any of those, and any questions, feel free to get a hold of me.
Great. And I'm telling you right now, you check out one of those, you're going to check out all of those because it's really interesting content. It's well done as well. So I appreciate
thank you. Thank you very much.
So much, Lisa. I really appreciate it. It also makes me miss you so much. You're one of my favorite people, but I once you talk to somebody you haven't talked to in a long time, you start remembering all the great stuff. You're like, I missed you. I got to come to Missouri.
Yeah. You need to come up and go explore a few new places.
Yes, definitely. I'll bring Tiffany with me.
Yes.
Be like the old days. Well, thank you again. And all the listeners, I appreciate you tuning in, and we always love to hear from you. And we will be back next Wednesday. We follow Kat Hobson's show. She does the first 2 hours from 7 to 9, and then we follow right in at 9 o'clock. So hope to see you back around here next week. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you again, Lisa, and good night.
Thank you. Good night.